I put off making this video for so long because Christmas is an awful time of year for me and teachers are an awful subject for me, and then I wound up starting on Christmas Eve. What's wrong with me? This episode starts with Izu talking to Aruto about HumaGear resets, and they talk as if it's the most normal thing in the world. Well, it feels like he's simply learning something new about the company he's running, which he is, but he's seriously not going to react about the concept of erasing HumaGear's memories. You'd think he'd take issue with that, since he does, treat humans and HumaGear equally. The lack of reaction, as always, just gets to me. This is clearly the first he's hearing about it, since the first line of the episode is a HumaGear reset, and the second line of the episode is Izu explaining what that means. Why is he not horrified that this is a thing? Why is he not more reluctant about this? At this point, I do want to interrupt myself and say that I keep talking about lack of reaction, so I just have to stress that this is nothing to do with Fumiya himself. He's a wonderful actor. It's not that he, as an actor, isn't making Aruto react, it's that he, as an actor, isn't being given the lines. So when I keep saying it bothers me that Aruto never seems to react, that has absolutely bugger all to do with Fumiya himself and everything to do with the lines he's being given. I'd hate for anyone to think I'm being negative about him specifically, because I never. The issue is that the coach, Kobe, because he's a basketball coach, so of course his name relates to his job. Kobe is keeping students behind after school at their request, at the students' request, and another teacher takes issue with it. So he contacts Aruto and requests a reset. Which, if you consider HumaGear as tools, I understand. It's horrible, but I understand. But if you consider HumaGear as living people, the idea that you can reset them, that their human owners can reset them, that's bloody disturbing. And I expected Aruto to say something. I expected him to voice disdain over that. I expected him to go out of his way to convince the human teacher that HumaGear are people and he shouldn't just reset them, that you wouldn't bonk your human employees on the head until they get amnesia, so why should you be able to reset HumaGear? That's what I expected from this. And I kept waiting and waiting for that moment where Aruto leaps to defend Kobe, for him to refuse the reset, for him to say that people who'd happily reset a HumaGear shouldn't be working with HumaGear, at least to have a conversation with Izu about how he swears to change things. But it never happened, because of course he didn't, and I should have been less optimistic at this point. I don't know why I kept holding out hope. Anyway, Fua appears again, and can I just say, I love this whole thing of calling individual people by their organisation. Seeing Fua going, Ames, or seeing Horobe or Jin alone and going, Metsubo Jinrai. Anyway, okay, one of the reasons I'm pressing on with this episode, because watching a school episode is really hard. This is Ansatsu-chan's debut. So Horobe explains to Jin that his new friend is, well, an assassin, but instead of him just being an assassin and or just uploading assassin data into him, he's going to learn by exposure over time. First of all, usually AI characters are exactly the same, and that's so boring and unrealistic. So the fact that they're all different types at different stages, learning things differently, is so interesting to me. Like, Hiden HumaGear are installed with data, Ansatsu-chan is here learning it. Horobe is more refined while Jin is childlike. Horobe and Naki and Jin and Ikazuchi are all different people. Ansatsu-chan is a different person. Every HumaGear of the week feels like a different person with their own personality. I loved that. And I loved that the writers weren't afraid to do that and didn't just make every single HumaGear character a rigid robotic type. Second of all, I think it's interesting that Horobe is going for machine learning here, which is when an AI learns things through experience rather than having it programmed into them, which is what happens with most Hiden HumaGear. Zia just installs data into them and that's how they know how to do things. Machine learning is hard. You need creativity, you need patience, and Horobe is able to do this with Ansatsu-chan. Horobi created Jin, which is one of the biggest and most popular steps into super AI, right? Horobi is the most advanced HumaGear, or one of the most advanced HumaGear in this entire series, because he created Jin. This isn't comparable to Bot, who does so because it's his job, he's programmed to do that. Horobi just did it. Therefore, later on, when Bot confirms that he, along with the rest of Metsubo Jinnai, are the most advanced HumaGear, that makes so much sense, because of course he is. He created Jin. I never expected the series to actively go that route, but he is. As soon as he said the words, "You are a HumaGear I created," he rose up the ranks, and he is miles more advanced than your average HumaGear. I just can't stress enough how much of Horobi's standing would be ripped away from him, and how much of this earlier stuff just wouldn't make sense if Horobi actually physically creating Jin is retconned. I'm so scared of that. Horobi's here with Ansatz-chan. He could install assassin data, but instead he's choosing machine learning, which is hard to do, but not that hard if you're an AI who created another AI and raised him as a child. The fact that Jin is indeed childlike shows that he had a good upbringing as an AI child. Jin would have learned things the exact same way, and it all just connects perfectly. Anyway, long story short, here Horobi is doing something a much more complicated way, but a lot more beneficial way than Hiden, because he's a super AI and he's more advanced and he can do it better. Also, don't you love how Ansatz-chan is all cute and adorable and Jin's a little child and Horobi doesn't care? Like, he's talking about his crusade against humanity, and Jin and Ansatz-chan are just like, yay, crusade, hands in the air, and they're just allowed to be carefree and adorable like that because Horobi's a dad and he's used to it. Anyway, we are less than 4 minutes into this episode, oh god. We then see Kobe practicing with the kids, and the kids love him. It's actually really cute, and then we learn from Fua that practice runs over by an hour. An hour? All of this because of 1 hour? Obviously, because I don't think HumaGear are all perfect little angels. This is a thing that needs to be addressed. You shouldn't be keeping students behind for an hour unless it's agreed upon beforehand for whatever reasons. Yes, okay, address it, but we're talking about resetting him because of an hour. Izu says, why didn't you reset the HumaGear yourself? And the teacher says, if it was that easy, I wouldn't have called you. So the teacher isn't calling them to reset Kobe just because that's protocol, he's calling them because he can't do it. So basically anyone who owns a HumaGear can reset them at any time, and they don't need permission, they don't need to explain their reasons, they can just do it. Ew. So apparently the head teacher, I've been saying teacher all this time, it's the head teacher, intended on doing it secretly. He's hiding behind a tree, mischievously, about to reset Kobe like he's about to cheekily throw a water balloon at someone. Like, seriously, you're going to do that without Kobe's knowledge in front of the kids he's training? I'm pretty sure traumatising the kids won't make the complaints go away. But Kobe realises and confronts the teacher. Good for him. The teacher is too intimidated by Kobe to go through with it, so he calls Hiden instead. We get Ansatz-chan again, doing his adorable Ansatsu head tilt. Jin then raises his arms and Ansatz-chan copies his gesture. And again, this is so machine learning, right? He's learning this behaviour from someone who, Jin, clearly. I just find it interesting that while both Izu and Chester remain quite professional the whole time, and even other HumaGear who do have their own personalities still, for the most part at least, still remain quite professional even outside of the workplace. HumaGear who learn with Horobi develop into their own non-work related personalities. The first two HumaGear we meet who are associated with Horobi are both adorable and childlike and expressive, but no, Horobi's clearly a bad dad. Jin and Yu fight, and in the background you can see Ansatz-chan watching, but he's not just watching, he's moving along with it. He's not just standing and analysing what he's seeing, he's engaging with the fight. Then the camera focuses on Jin and Yu for a bit, but when it cuts back, and this is so subtle, but when it cuts back, Jin has his hands on his hips, and Ansatz-chan also has his hands on his hips behind him, and it's little details like that I just adore about this series. Yua freezes Ansatz-chan, they fight some more, and oh my god, Jin goes Shakin! Doka! Ignore me. Shakin! Doka! School is in lockdown, but the kids want to keep practicing, so Kobe brings them back into the sports hall to practice. And I feel like this is something that needs addressing. Kobe is doing what the kids want when he shouldn't be. A conversation needs to be had. Resetting is just overkill. So Adato provides a better space for them to practice, and he's catching and throwing balls and helping them practice, which is a very down-to-earth thing to do. It's something that shows that he isn't just some stiff corporate better than everyone else type. No, he's on the level, and he's the same as everybody else, and that was just such a nice moment to me. He's really getting into it. He didn't have to provide that space, and he certainly doesn't have to practice with them. Adato has so many good moments in earlier episodes. I just wish it had stayed like that, and those nice moments didn't get ruined by such disturbing ideals. Then we get to the bit I've been waiting for. Adato declaring that hidden intelligence isn't willing to reset Kobe, which Adato claims to be because Kobe is behaving correctly or acting according to his learning algorithm, which I know I just had this entire conversation about machine learning. This is not the same. HumaGear are installed with data. It's called a learning process, but it's an installation. We see that for ourselves, which is not what you want to hear as being the actual reason. Surely the actual reason is that because Kobe is a living person and doesn't deserve to be reset. But Adato being bound by company standards and it being a long and difficult process to change these awful backwards practices, so he has to work with what he has in the meantime, would have been great. Adato having to tell the head, we will not be resetting Kobe at this time because his algorithm is functioning correctly, all the while thinking, I hate that HumaGear can just be reset, we need to change things, would have been one thing. It's the fact that he doesn't seem to be thinking that bothers me. And the fact that this decision happens directly after a scene where Adato learns that the team are going to be disbanded soon, and this one kid just wants to win this one match before that happens, just so clearly means that he's making this decision for the kids, not for Kobe. And if that wasn't clear, Adato saying, more than anything, the kids really want to win, certainly is. So the head says, well, why not make it conditional? We reset Kobe if the team loses, since this will be disbanded, and they won't need a coach anyway. And Adato looks so regretful. But does he look regretful because of the kids or because of Kobe? I hate that I don't know. Care about Kobe! But then Kobe accepts the terms, because he's confident they'll win, which they don't. The kids want to give up, and Kobe says, if you give up, then the game is really over. And it's a really sweet and emotional moment with the teacher interrupts by reminding everyone Kobe needs to be reset now, and Adato tries to stop him. But is he trying to stop him so Kobe doesn't get reset or so the kids don't lose their coach? Plus, how heartless is it to try and reset Kobe while he's comforting the kid? Humans are so mean in this series. And Kobe gains singularity and he's confused and he doesn't know what's going on. And this is the first time Adato actually watches this happen, I think. Jin explains what's going on, and Adato flashes back to all the other HumaGear who have been hacked and killed, and realises that all those HumaGear he had to fight had gained sentience, and then tries to stop Fua from shooting at Kobe. Which is one, like I said in episode 4, how I love that even though Adato and Fua had that moment of trust, they still continue to be at odds for a bit. They aren't suddenly magically friends, but the build-up is there. I really liked that. And 2, it's another nice moment that shows that Adato does legitimately care about HumaGear. And something that made me think that maybe now they'll start to second guess all these awful rules and regulations against HumaGear. He seemed to care about Kobe eventually, but a lot of his priorities were misguided. So I thought that's what part of his character arc would be. It wasn't. Kobe is hacked, and Metsubojin Nai Neto ni Zatsuck, and that was the end of that. But not for long. Kidding. Does anyone at any point sit Kobe down and explain to him why he can't keep the students after hours? No, the teacher told him parents were complaining and they didn't want him to keep them after hours. Kobe explained that the students requested this time. Nobody took the time to sit him down and explain that that's not how it works, and he needs to refuse their requests and let them go home on time or arrange some kind of after-school club. Nobody explains this to him. Does anyone sit the kids down and explain to them why they shouldn't ask Kobe to keep them behind? Why it's unfair to put a HumaGear in that position? No, nobody has a conversation with the kids about Kobe at all. Does anyone sit the teacher down and explain to him that HumaGear are people and we shouldn't be resetting them just because we disagree with their methods? And maybe treat them like an employee and talk to him instead of trying to reset him. No, not at all. He's just a cartoon villain who never seems to learn how disturbing his behaviour was. Of course, because moulding your robot pet, I mean employee, into your perfectly well-behaved puppet is so much easier than talking to them.